The following content is not suitable for children.
George, women have less orgasms than men. It's not fair.
Uh-oh. I think we're going to talk about the orgasm gap
We
between
are.
men and women.
We
All
are.
right. Here it is.
Welcome to Foreplay Radio, Couples and Sex Therapy. I'm Laurie Watson, your sex therapist.
And I'm George Fowler, your couples therapist.
And we are passionate about talking about sex and helping you develop a way to talk to each other.
Our mission is to help our audience develop a healthier relationship to sex that integrates the mind, the heart, and the body.
Laurie, there's some disturbing stats. We're checking out this article by Alice Broster, about the orgasm gap. And wow, there's some disturbing numbers here. So let's get into some of them.
Yeah. So what are they saying?
Well, a Durex study found that a little over 20% of women do not orgasm at all, compared to less than 2% of men.
Mm-hmm.
And during intercourse, we've talked about this. This stat blew my brain that 80% of women are not orgasm during intercourse, right? Most of their orgasms are going to come from clitoral stimulation. And yet, the majority of men are orgasming during intercourse.
Right. So it makes sense that men want to drive toward sexual intercourse because that's how they climax, right? But women are not. So what do you think causes the orgasm gap?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, but there's something built into a lack of awareness around how females are built and how they orgasm that allows these numbers to be lower. I mean, they also said 96% of men are going to orgasm during a sexual encounter, where only 64% of women are going to have an orgasm. And that's in whatever the sexual encounter is. Right.
So a little less than half of women are not orgasming during most of their sexual encounters. So 40%, let's say, 40%. So, one of the things that is so important in partnered sex is mutual satisfaction. A woman's got to have a climax, really. I think that builds her libido. I don't think every single time a woman has to orgasm. Sometimes women enjoy the experience of intercourse without orgasming. Both people can enjoy just being naked, touching. They don't always have to have an orgasm. And I think that sometimes women particularly tell me, I don't always need it. Although I would say that's her call. And I never really hear men talk about that.
Right.
I just want to be in bed, have an erection, and it's okay if I don't climax.
I appreciate you giving us the meta perspective, because I do think it's important to set the goal. The goal is to connect, then that's very achievable. I think sometimes there's too much pressure when we put the goal as an orgasm or a mutual orgasm. And there are some of these statistics here that say there is an unfairness to just the number of orgasms happening in a relationship, in a heterosexual relationship. And yet, when you look at lesbians, they're having more orgasms than heterosexual women,
right?
Which I found very interesting. What do you think that's about, Laurie?
Well, I hope what it's about is that a woman understands female anatomy. And so she understands the timing of it. She can sense, her partner's body as it gets aroused. She knows what she's looking for because she knows her own body. Although I will say, George, I've counseled many lesbian women who don't know if their partner climaxes. So that's a whole nother story. But yes, by and large, a woman knows her own body and therefore she knows her partner's female body. Whereas I think men don't know, where does it center in a woman in terms of her excitement and her arousal? Most men, they think it's the vagina. The vagina is it's hand in glove, right? The vagina is an inside out penis. Whatever he's feeling on the outside of his penis, she's feeling on the inside of her vagina. And so not true.
Right. In a YouGov study, they found that when you asked men to label a diagram of the vulva, 60% of men couldn't describe the function of the urethra. 47% didn't know where or what the labia was. 52% didn't know what the vagina was for. So there's some really kind of, I would say, gross negligence here. What do you think, Laurie? Just have no idea what these body parts are. They're all lumped together.
Right. And they probably think that potentially, right, touching any and all of those parts causes the same excitement or arousal as touching the clitoris. That study gave me a little bit of hope because there was a fairly high percentage of men who could label the clitoris. Thank God.
Yes.
So there's getting to be more information about the clitoris. But if they don't know the other structures and what they're for and how they, start to engage in the sexual excitement of any encounter, that's tough.
And who are teaching men about a woman's body? I mean, this isn't a man problem. That's why, to me, this is more of a cultural, societal problem, right? How many women don't know their own bodies, right? How many mothers don't talk to their kids about their own bodies, and fathers? This is a whole system built in place that really have a lack of awareness around female anatomy and what it takes to create an orgasm.
And I happen to know you as a father have mentioned the clitoris to your sons.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate that. And I also mentioned the clitoris when I was describing to my son's female anatomy, as the center of how a woman gets excited. But how many parents have said that to their children as they are helping their children learn about their own bodies, about the opposite sex body? I mean, I don't think many people say that to their kids. I was on a Facebook post the other day, and there was something like, "Can you imagine?" It was people against school education. I mean, for heaven's sakes, they're mentioning and labeling the clitoris. I'm like, and why would you not do that in the 7th grade? Like, so important to know where the clitoris is versus the ovaries. I mean, in terms of our future sexuality, is it not more important to know where the clitoris is? But they were up in arms. It's like, this doesn't need to be told to children. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, me, there's always a good reason for it. If you think that education is going to lead to promiscuity, then, I get people's reluctance. But that's why we need good education, not just random education, right?
Yeah. And I will say, just to add to that point, that the research does say that children, particularly young girls, whose mothers have taken the time to really educate them about their bodies and about their body's sexual response, the stats show that they are less promiscuous. Because you can imagine, right? This is something I own. My mother gave it to me. My mother labeled it for me. She told me about it. It isn't some other person or some boy who gives me this experience the first time. It's like, it's mine. And so they own it. There's more agency in that when you are told and given this good gift of knowledge by your parents. And I mean, I think it's the same sort of thing with boys too, respectfully teaching them about a female body. I mean, what a message.
A beautiful message. But you can see all the things that can stack up that can make it harder for women to have an orgasm. You don't get that education. Right. You are in college and you're hooking up and your body takes longer to warm up, and that's not happening. I mean, there's so many things that could get in the way of having an orgasm. For a guy, it's a lot easier. I mean, boom, there you go. It's ready. And it's so there's
that boom again. I love
there's that boom. Testosterone's a beautiful thing, and it makes the process easier. That's why so many men don't develop other areas that can really enhance their sexuality, because they're so focused on the boom. But that is helpful when it comes to an orgasm, right? That's why these statistics are so skewed in the direction of men having orgasms. And when men later in life struggle with that, they start to have real problems, right? So I think we're also going to talk about how to educate men to develop other areas of their sexuality instead of just this focus on the orgasm and the testosterone. But talk a little bit, Laurie, about, hookup culture and how infrequently women actually orgasm then. Here they are in the prime of their lives, and it's not happening. So tell us more about that.
Right. Only 10% of women, George, are shown to orgasm during a hookup. So you think about this. There are many times, I think, seasons of life, and maybe most young people realize it's not a time for permanence. But they do feel sexuality coursing through their bodies. I get that. I get that. And especially, I think if young men are more focused on genital pleasure versus intimacy, a hookup is a beautiful mechanism for that. And, variety makes a lot of sense to a lot of young men. It's like great. And to women too. And I in no way am saying that women can't be very sexual at those ages and can't have orgasms and can't direct their partners. Some of them do. But the agency that is required for a young woman in a hookup to A, know her body, know how she climaxes, B, demanded of her partner and say, hey, baby, go down, Right. It's like, right? It's like saying those things to a stranger, you really have to feel a lot of confidence about it, about your ability to take. Right. And I think that, many times women are socialized to give.
Yes.
Especially sexually. I want to give to my partner. I want to make my partner happy. I want to make them feel like man of the world and appreciated. But we're not socializing young women to take sexually. And those things are intertwined, right? It's not one or the other experience. But I think young men, they do feel okay about, hey, I'm going for it. And so they have the orgasm and then maybe they're done. They don't have the patience. They don't even know if she came or not. So many young men say, I have no idea if she came or not. And it's like, ooh, wow, gosh. And maybe they're not just selfish and want to come themselves and not, but they don't know and they don't have the sort of self developed yet to ask the woman because if she says no, maybe they'll feel inadequate. There's so much at stake in that moment. And so lots of things coming against this hookup. And
most of these men really want their partner to orgasm. It's not a selfishness that they don't care. They want to, but there's a miss happening here. And I think you're putting your finger on something I want to talk about when we come back from break. This female kind of being shaped to give, where men are more shaped to kind of get what they need. And that's going to play out here with the orgasm. So let's come back and talk about that.
Okay, good.
So for all you therapists out there listening to our show, I really want you to check out successinvulnerability.com, our new training website that we believe is taking online therapist training to the next level. It's so focused on moment by moment, practical moves, less theory, to really get people to have immediate success. Right? We're trying to measure targets of change so we can see if we're on target or we need to adjust. And the feedback we're getting is really excited. We're incorporating that feedback to continually adjust and to change the schedule. And come join us, SIV team.
I'll just put a plug in for it as well because I am one of the learners. This kind of instruction just is not out there. How to do the micro moves that change people's hearts toward each other. It's so good. So it's reasonably priced. I just encourage you to go over to successinvulnerability.com and sign up. It's great training.
Speaking with certified sex therapist Laurie Watson from Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Laurie, what is an intensive?
So an intensive is 12 to 14 hours of therapy all in one weekend. And it's a way to really make fast progress on an issue that you've been stuck in. Maybe it's a sexual issue or a relationship issue. People will fly in maybe on a Friday and we'll do 3 hours usually, get them acclimated, kind of set a direction. And then on Saturday, we usually do 4 or 5 hours and Sunday morning 4 or 5 hours as well. Compared to weekly therapy, there's just so much more you can get done when you have a chunk of time.
How do people know if an intensive will help them?
I do an initial hour interview to make sure that the candidate is suited for that kind of deep, long work. And also to make sure that I'm the right person. And for the record, if you don't choose to come in and see me, then you don't have to pay for that hour.
Overcome the challenges in your relationship and your sex life. Learn more about intensives and Awakening Center's other services at awakenloveandsex.com.
So let's talk about this get and give dynamics playing out. I saw this just last night. I went to the movies with my wife. And this is the first time since COVID. So nice. We were excited. We saw, what do we see? West Side Story, which I won't get into. But anyway, we go to the movie theater, we get our tickets, and now they're like, you got to select your seat. And it was pretty empty. So I just saw these dynamics play out that I'm looking for the best seats. I want to be dead center. I want to be in a comfortable, I don't want people around me. So I'm being strategic. And the guy's like, can you pick a seat? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. And my wife immediately just like said, 2 seats, like randomly. She just want like create no drama. She want it to be easy. She don't care where she's going to sit. She's not like, so then we get into the movie theater. And of course the 2 seats she picked were not the seats that I would want to sit at. And I'm like, why would your brain even think about these seats? Like all the way in the corner. Like, I don't even understand. Like it would never occur to my brain because my brain has been trained to go for what I want, to speak about that. That's a privilege that a lot of men have. It's like, express what you need. Where she's always been kind of trained to like, don't cause a wave, just kind of make sure everybody's happy. Your needs aren't as important. If you sit in a corner, you sit in a corner. And I'm sitting there watching this movie saying, this is total different world. Yeah. Well, I didn't stay in the corner, so, which
so
caused a little fight
yourself.
with me. I asserted myself and I got to the seat I wanted, but, and then I sent a message to my wife that, is critical and we could get into our negative cycle. But I think so often this is what you're saying is happening sexually.
I think you are right on. This is exactly, I believe, the dynamic that is problematic in the orgasm gap. Men do feel entitled to at least assert what they want.
And that's a good thing, man. That's a good thing.
No, that's a good thing. It is a good thing. We need women to have more of that.
Amen.
I do think we need men to be sensitive to the fact that women don't have more of that naturally. And if they want their partners to be sexually assertive, encouraging it at the movie theater might help.
Yes.
There
you go.
Right?
Oh, let's put a highlight on that one. Because this is the stuff happening outside the bedroom that's really important. Women need to get better at expressing their needs, at what they want, that they have a right to that it's not their job to take everyone else's needs first before their own, right? It's finding that balance. Maybe men focus too much on it and women not enough, but that's why you need a relationship where you can balance yin and yang each other out.
Right. And I mean, we also know there's a gap in terms of the household work that women do and the child rearing work. I mean, there's a gap. And I think some of it is women don't assert early enough. Maybe they make their needs known critically and angrily after they have felt for some period of time the gap, rather than saying, hey, this is what I need. Just this tiny little aside, but my son had a girlfriend who they lived together, and she looked at me one day and she said, we're going to have the chore conversation today. And I said, ooh, good luck with that with my son. And what she said to him is, okay, what do you like to do? What are the chores you like to do? And he listed them. And she said, how long that take you? And he listed it. And she said, great, you do that. And I'll do this for this many minutes. I'll do all this kind of stuff. And that's how we'll break it up. So she let him choose. What do you want to do? And how long does it take you? That's your job. And then I'll take this piece, because she said it didn't really matter to her. But I mean, she was so assertive in a young relationship to have this negotiation early. I thought it was so great and thoughtful of her. The way she presented it, she didn't wait until there was resentment that built up. She decided right at the beginning, let's divvy this up. And I think, right at the beginning, sexually, right? You need to put out there, if you're a female, this is how I like it. This is how I climax. This is what it takes me. And so many women are comparing their arousal to the quick male arousal. So they say, I'm dysfunctional because I take long. I'm like, no, you don't. You're female. This is how long it takes females. I mean, women tell me all the time, how long does it take you to, I'll ask them, how long does it take you to orgasm? And she'll say, oh, gosh, forever, like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, that's half the average. That's half the average.
Yeah, you're way ahead of the game.
You're way ahead of the game, because it takes most women 20 minutes of clitoral stimulation to orgasm. And that's after she's become aroused. So it's going to take her something, maybe another 20 minutes is what I think, of general arousal to kind of sink into the moment to even want her clitoris to be touched. Whereas men, right? They see her come out of the shower, they're erect, boom, they can have intercourse.
Beautiful thing, that boom, I'll tell you.
And they can have an orgasm in maybe 2 minutes. I mean, to be male, how wonderful,
It would be nice if every female could just experience that once, and every man could experience what it's like to be a female.
Exactly. I had...
boom! I'm just going to go with that all day now.
Love it. Doctor, he had prostate cancer. He was on the drug that sucked all the testosterone out of his body. And he said to me, Laurie, I would not wish this process on my worst enemy, but I wish for one day I felt what a body felt like without testosterone. He says, I would have had so much more compassion, patience, and empathy for my female partner.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've worked too with a lot of men that, have ED and are suffering from no testosterone. That is, and they just, sex is, without an orgasm, they can't even imagine like even engaging in it.
Mm-hmm.
And to think about a lot of women, that is sex.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. That they've learned to just try to be responsive, and hopefully things work. But it's like it's such a loving thing to do, but we're encouraging women out there to like expect more from it, want more from it. That there is something about, there's this good book called Fairplay that really talks about how so many things fall. Like women become the safety net to take care of everything. Like if I come home and I want to help out, I'm going to do the dishes. But if I'm having a bad day, I'm too tired, I'm just not going to do the dishes. Like the dishes are going to fall on my wife one way or the other if I do them or don't do them. Like, and there's like a million examples of that throughout a day that are just these invisible kind of unconscious ways women get the message that, they got to put other people's needs and other people do things for other people before their own. And then all of a sudden we want them to turn that off and sexually show up in this big, robust way. And it's like, no, they've had 1,000 interactions that have shaped them and they pulling that into the bedroom. So let's make this more conscious. Let's have these conversations and let's start shifting those numbers.
You are dead on here. Absolutely. Thousands of examples where women are taught they need to be the one who smooths it over, who's the net, who captures all the details. It's Christmas, right? And I saw this Facebook post of, he's got to get her gift. Mm-hmm. And she's getting the children's gifts, the in-laws' gifts, the neighbors' gifts, the teachers' gifts. Like, it's the Christmas machine.
The sanitation. There's so many gifts out there my wife gets. I'm like, oh, why do we get them not too? I mean, it's amazing, the list.
But it's like, who's doing those gifts? Your wife is doing those gifts. Right. And so many examples of that. And I think you're right. How do we share more fairly those kinds of things? Mm-hmm. How do we encourage our partner to assert themselves in conflict, saying, hey, this is what I want. What do you want? And really listening to the other argument if this is what I want. Men can go a long ways, both emotionally and physically, like knowing anatomy, knowing how a woman climaxes, knowing the timing that it takes. I mean, if I were male and I could come and go boom in 2 minutes, that would be awesome. I would love that. I mean, who would not want that? And sometimes you want to give that. I get that. Of course you want to give that to your partner when they feel it every once in a while. But, if you're in a female body, you're kind of trapped. It takes us a long time.
And this isn't something that men are doing as a favor so women can close the gap. I mean, that's cool. Men want this too. They want women to be more engaged sexually, to be more assertive, to be more empowered. Like, this is a win for both sexes, right? If we start to shift these numbers.
Exactly.
Man.
Fair play.
I think we're not trying to get people to just break down tasks. I mean, that's helpful, but it's what those tasks represent emotionally. Like, women have to see that their willingness, that's beautiful, starts to suffocate their ability to kind of express their needs and their desires, right? And both sides got to help to kind of change that. But if you just go take a piece of paper and break up the chores, I mean, that's helpful, but it will probably express itself differently just in another area. Like, I really hope our listeners are being more intentional to say, like, how can we get my female partner to see the value in kind of expressing their needs more, right? That this is something that if they're not conscious, it's gonna do its thing.
And it's really inviting conflict is what I feel. As you say that, for women to start to say, hey, I need fair play, not just foreplay, but I really need you to examine with me how much time you get in relaxation compared to how much time I get in relaxation, or like, how is this really equal so that our burdens are equal? And I mean, having that conversation I hear women all the time say, it's what kills my sex drive is my resentment.
Yep.
I say resentment is the monster under the bed.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have people list out chores in the sexual questionnaire. Like, how do you divide things? Because I knew fair play was so important. And I had one guy write down, you know what? Every single week, 729 million blades of grass are cut by me. That's how much I'm doing. It's like, okay.
Well, that's my reluctance to want to turn this conversation into just a brokering more tasks, because I do think a lot of women have to learn from men to let go of tasks, to let go of lists, to let go of, making life all about. There's a balance, a yin and a yang, that both sides have something really valuable to contribute here. But as we lean into the female part of this, right, I think for men to buy in, they really have to see their own benefits, because that's what they're looking out for a lot of the time. But to recognize the more that a woman can express their needs, the more they're going to show up in energetic ways, in affirming ways, and engaged ways. Like, that is what men want. They want their partner to be more present, and they don't realize this is getting in the way. So I think this is really empowering for men too, to kind of see that they can get more from their partner, which is really awesome. I'm going to give that a boom.
I'm going to laugh at you every single time you do that, G. I love it. And you're right. I mean, the chore war could go on. And there are women who are compulsive and obsessive about clean. There are certainly men that are obsessive about clean too. But I mean, it does impact, though, our sexuality, how we negotiate, how we represent the self and our own needs is really important, and is pervasive throughout the romantic relationship, not just in the bedroom. And if we want our partners to represent themselves, we got to be open to that happening everywhere.
We set up our listeners for some fights. I like it. That's a good thing. As long as you can repair, it's going to give you more energy.
You know what? Conflict creates sparks, and sparks create sex. So have at it.
Yeah, have at it.
Boom. Okay. Keep it hot.
And keep it fair. Boom.
Hey, don't forget to check out uberlube.com with the coupon foreplay. It really helps us to support the podcast and keep delivering free content. Thanks so much.
Call in your questions to the Foreplay question voicemail. Dial 833-MY-4PLAY. That's 833-MY-4-PLAY. And we'll use the questions for our mailbag episodes. All content is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as a substitute for therapy by a licensed clinician or as medical advice from a doctor. This podcast is copyrighted by Foreplay Media.